Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. So today's a very special day. Today is George Harrison of the Beatles' birthday. If he was still alive today, he would be 76 years old. God bless you, George. The whole reason I wanted to make this video today is because George Harrison is such a huge influence spiritually on this planet. If you're a Westerner and you're into any sort of Eastern philosophy, Eastern religion, you have George Harrison pretty much to thank for that. So I want to just get into a couple stories about George, about his life, and how he influenced the Western Hemisphere to get into a spiritual kind of vibe. And I also want to share a few stories of my own and how he has influenced me and how it's just kind of like all been wrapped up together in this beautiful little way. So join me today and we're going to jump into the story of George Harrison. Okay, so George Harrison of the Beatles, he was considered the quiet one. And what's funny is supposedly if you got to know George, he was anything but quiet. He could talk your ear off. He was so into spirituality and into the esoteric things of life that once you got him going, it was hard to stop him. He would talk all night. So the quiet one, yeah, probably not. But what's so interesting to me is that I honestly would not be here making these videos with you guys right now if it wasn't for George Harrison, because he started me on my spiritual path. I was so into his music. Like the first, I loved the Beatles, but I remember when I first discovered George was when I really listened to the song Within You, Without You for the first time. There'll be a link down below to that song. That song it sounded different from all other songs on Sgt. Pepper, and it just had this feeling. There was just some kind of this depth to the song that wasn't on any of the other songs and wasn't on any other song I'd heard from the Beatles in general. And I remember that it just grabbed me and I was like, whoa, like I just had to pay attention. And then I wanted to know who wrote that song. And I found out, okay, it's George. George Harrison wrote that song. So now I want to know what other songs is he writing. And I got obsessed. I was like looking up all of his songs on the albums, like which song did George write? And I listened to all of those. And then I got into his solo albums. And I was like, oh my God, this is where the meat is. George has such an interesting story. Okay, imagine being one of the Beatles in the heyday of Beatles mania. And you're one of the four of the most famous people on the planet. You have anything and everything that you want. You have access to whatever in the world you want because you're so famous that people want you to have it. It's sex, drugs, rock and roll, whatever it is, you can have it. You can go and see and do whatever you want to do. And in the midst of all of that, you know what George said? I'm not happy. None of this is bringing me happiness. He could get anything he wanted and he couldn't find happiness in any of that stuff. And so he was just kind of like in this like, what is going on? Like, I'm supposed to, like this success and all this fame and fortune is supposed to bring you happiness, but I'm not. I'm miserable. He hated touring. That's the whole reason why the Beatles stopped touring is because of George. And so George was kind of in this weird place in his life. And his girlfriend that he was dating at the time, her name was Patty Boyd. She went to a lecture by Maharishi at first, I believe, and then she brought George to one. And then so George kind of was into this. He was like, wow, like this guy Maharishi is saying that true happiness lies within, and there's a meditation technique that can help you find that happiness. And so George is like, whoa, I think I found the answer. And so he brought the other boys along, the other Beatles, and that's when they all went to India and ended up learning meditation from the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. That's just so cool because George's girlfriend Patty wasn't into this whole thing and didn't bring George into it, and George didn't bring the rest of the Beatles. The whole rest of the world might not be into this because whatever the Beatles were into back in the 60s, we all paid attention to that because we were so hyper-focused on them. Whatever they said was cool, we thought was cool too. So we have the Beatles, we have George, we have Patty to thank for Eastern spirituality being introduced on the scale and on the level that it was back in the 60s. So thank you guys so much. So anywho, George Harrison, super famous man, couldn't find happiness, found it through meditation. And that whole story of him just captivated me. I was like, I couldn't get enough of just like the life of George Harrison. So sadly, when George Harrison passed away in 2001, I bought every single magazine, every book. I bought his biography. I bought anything I could read about George Harrison because I just wanted to know more about this man and his life. And the cool thing was there was so much that he introduced me to that I had no idea about. And that's why I say like George introduced me to my spiritual path, because like I'm reading like these magazines and these books and his autobiography, and I would find words that I had never seen before, like mantra, Krishna, transcendence, Maharishi, all these different words. I was just like, what are these? You know, so I started Googling them and be like, okay, what's this mean? What's that mean? What's this mean? And I started building my vocabulary, building this new world. This new world was becoming revealed to me through reading about George Harrison, and I was just getting more and more excited about it. So during this time of reading about George Harrison's life, some friends of mine, we decided to go to this festival concert, and it was in New Jersey. And so we went to this concert, and it was a crazy concert. I swear to God, I almost died at this concert. It was like really intense, all day long festival kind of thing. And the next day, we were like, we're so close to New York City. Let's go to New York City and like see the city. We'd never been there. We're from the Midwest. This is our first time. Let's go check it out. So like the concert the day before literally almost killed me. I felt like just like death warmed over walking through the city. I was just like, walking through the city. And it was just me and some friends. We wanted to go see like Ground Zero. 9/11 had just happened recently. There we are. We're in downtown New York, and if you've ever been downtown, you know like the sidewalks are just absolutely crazy. And so we're walking, and all of a sudden, this guy just out of the crowd just grabs me by the shoulder and is like, "Hey, you look like you're a bright person. Like you would like to have a conversation about consciousness." And I was just like, "What?" And I was like, "Really, buddy?" Because I was like, I just feel like a zombie right now. Like, you think I look like I want to talk about consciousness? Well, cool, I guess. But, and also like the way he looked just kind of struck me, because he looked different than everybody else on the street. And I'd never seen someone like this. He had a shaved head, and he was wearing this like kind of like sweater kind of thing. And I was like, "You look familiar." And he was like, "I'm a Hare Krishna, and I wanted to know if I could talk to you about Krishna." And I was like, all of a sudden it just like struck me. I was like, oh, I was like, George Harrison talks about the Hare Krishnas. And I've been reading about George Harrison because he recently passed away. And this guy was like, "Oh, that's funny. George Harrison writes the foreword for this book." And so he pulls out a copy of the Bhagavad Gita, which is like the Hindu Bible. And I was like, "No way, George Harrison wrote the foreword of this book." So he flips it open, shows me, and it's, you know, there's George Harrison's foreword printed in the book with George Harrison's signature printed in the book. And I was just like, wow, this is so cool. At the same time, I'm trying to like stop my friends from keep walking down the sidewalk and leaving me in the middle of New York. And I'm just like, "Wait, guys, wait." You know, and I'm trying to talk to this guy over here, and everything's happening at the same time. And I'm just like, and he's like, "Can you give me a donation?" And I was like, yeah. Like, I just like reach in my pocket, and I grab out, like, I had a $10 bill, and I just like, here you go. And he was like so surprised to get this $10 bill. And he was like, "Oh, really? Okay, cool." So he gives me the book. I give him the $10 bill. I like turn to my friends and say, "Hey guys, wait a minute, wait for me. You know, I'm almost done." And so then I turn back around to say thank you to this guy, and he's gone. Like I cannot find him in the crowd at all. Turning around, and nobody. No, I'm looking all around in the crowd, and I'm just like, of the street, and I'm just like, "Where is he? Where is he? Where is he? Where is he?" Nowhere to be found. I cannot find this guy. He just like upped and disappeared. I got cold chills. It was like just a scene out of a movie. I was like, wow. I just felt like this book was just kind of like whoosh, just given to me, and I was like, thank you. So yeah, that was a really trippy story. George just kind of like, you know, through the Hare Krishna in the middle of this crowd when I felt like I looked like death. You know, it was just like, "Here, I think you need to read this book." And like, I read that book at least 3 times. It was a great read. And I was just so thankful to have that experience. So yeah, in the middle of all this, of reading about George Harrison, going to that concert, hearing about these new words like mantra, Krishna, Maharishi, transcendence, I started Googling all this stuff. One thing led to another. I'm gonna try to make this story really short. I ended up going to a university in Iowa called Maharishi University of Management. It was founded by Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, the same guy who taught George Harrison the technique of transcendental meditation. So this is a university based on the technique of transcendental meditation, TM. So I ended up enrolling at this university, getting very involved with everything there, and eventually getting a job with the David Lynch Foundation and David Lynch. And we put together this concert, and the concert was headlined by Paul McCartney. This is a big long story, I'm just making it real short. During the concert, I was sitting in the audience. During the show, before Paul was on stage, Jerry Seinfeld was on stage doing his act. And whenever I laugh, whenever I get really tickled, my laugh is really loud. And so Jerry's doing his thing, I start laughing really loud, and I laugh so loud that the lady sitting in front of me is like, turns around to be like, who is this crazy man behind me like laughing? And so like the lady turns around, and because I'm so obsessed with George Harrison, I know everybody in his family, what they look like, I immediately recognize that the lady turning around looking at me is Olivia Harrison, George Harrison's wife. And I was just like, oh my God. I was like, what are the chances? And so I was like, I wonder who's sitting next to her. I wonder if it's her son, Danny, if he's sitting here. I was like, I'd love to meet them. I looked to her right. She's like sitting diagonally right in front of me. And I looked to the person who's like sitting on both of her sides. And the person sitting right in front of me to her right is no other than Yoko Ono. I can tell just by the size and her hat. And I was like, that has got to be Yoko Ono. So right after Seinfeld left the stage, it's intermission, they bring up the lights, and I was like, this is my only chance to be able to say hello and to thank these women. Especially, I mean, I love John Lennon, don't get me wrong, I love John Lennon, I love Yoko Ono, I think she's an amazing person, but my heart just was really with George and Olivia, and I just really wanted to connect with them. I introduced myself kind of shyly, I was like, oh, pardon me, excuse me, like, I just wanted to say, I don't want to disturb you, but I just wanted to say, thank you for being part of your husband's life. And, you know, if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be sitting here in the seat right now saying thank you to you. So thank you so much, you know? And when that moment happened, after I said thank you and I just like sat back in my seat, have you ever seen one of those Zen paintings that's like a circle and they just make these perfect circles? I felt like when I said thank you and I sat back in the seat, my back touched the seat, I felt like I was one of those Zen paintings, and then like the painter had just finished the painting. I was like, done. It was like there was some sort of completion that happened. It was like I loved and respected and admired George and his music so much that I wanted to meet him somehow, some way. And the closest thing I could to meeting him was someone in his family, like his wife or his son. And I got to meet his wife. And I'm sure she doesn't remember that. I'm sure she, you know, she's met so many people. But it meant something to me, and I will always remember it. And it just was like I said, it was like a completion moment in my life. Like it just, it was extremely powerful, and I will never forget it. Another cool little funny random story, and again, I will make this really short. I never actually met George Harrison, but sometimes people say that when you meet someone in your dreams, especially after they've passed away, you're actually meeting part of their soul, because their soul's no longer like connected to their physical body, and their soul's more able to like travel. And so supposedly sometimes when you have like a deep admiration with someone, you know, they'll come and visit you in your dream time. And I swear to you guys, I had a dream of George Harrison and I met him. And this is one of the most real dreams I've ever had. And that's the only reason why I feel like I have met him. And that's why I consider that I do, even though it was in a dream. So real quick, I'm gonna make this a really quick little abridged version of this dream. Basically, I was sitting at home in my dream. Friends came over, I'm in my pajamas, my friends come over to my house, they're like, come to this house party with us. And I'm like, but I'm in my pajamas. And so they take me to this house party. It's at this huge house, like way bigger than, nicer than any house I've ever been in. I'm just like, I don't belong here. My friends bring me in. We're eating all these hors d'oeuvres and seeing these beautiful rooms with giant paintings and everything's amazing. I'm like, this is awesome, but what are we doing here? And my friends are like, go into that room over there. So I go into this room and there's all these chairs set up in like this semicircle in these rows, and they're all facing in this one area of the room. So we all take a seat, and then all of a sudden this door opens and out walks George Harrison of all people. I'm just like, what? And I'm like, oh my God. So here he comes out, he's got his guitar cases, he's got a ukulele case, and he sets it down, and I literally witnessed George Harrison give a full performance of Beatles songs, of his solo songs, of songs on the ukulele. It was the most amazing thing. We all sang along with him. We cried, we laughed, he told stories. It was incredible. It was just like the most intimate concert with George Harrison ever. And I will never forget that. I know it was just a dream, but it was more real to me than most things in my life. And it meant so much to me to have that experience with him. Fast forward to the dream, after the concert was over, we're walking out to the car. We're just, me and my friends are like, oh my God, like, that was so amazing. And I hear some like clanking behind me, and I look behind me and I realize George is walking behind me with all of his guitar cases, and he's like holding them. And I'm like, oh my God, let me help you. So I go to help him. I grab some guitar cases. I'm helping him to his car. I know he doesn't like to be like gushed over, so I'm trying my best not to like be like, oh my God. And like, so I put the guitar cases like in the car, and I just kind of like nodded. We nod each other, and I start to walk away, and I just turn around and I was like, this is your only chance, dude. I turn around and I was like, George, I just have to say thank you so much for sharing your music with the world. And it's changed my life. And he reached out, gave me a hug, and he said this into my ears when he gave me a hug. He said, everything is going to be all right. And I just, this feeling came over me. It just felt like everything's going to be all right. George said it was going to be all right, so it must be. And so I remember going back to the car that my friends had brought me to the party in, sat down. It was a minivan actually. And they were like, what did he say to you? I'm sitting in the minivan, and I was just like, you're never going to believe this. And they like shut the door of the minivan, like the sliding door. And as they shut it, it was like, popped out of bed. And I was like, oh, and I was just like, oh my God, I think I just met George Harrison. So real, so real. So that was my one meeting. George's songs just speak to my soul. The way, if you've ever listened to any of his music, you know that like he didn't just write songs like just to write a song. He, like, especially for his solo years, he was very spiritually oriented with his music. He was mostly writing songs to God. You would think it would be a love song to a woman, but really most of his love songs were to the divine. He was so in love with the divine. He wanted to reconnect. He wanted that feeling back in his life, that fullness, that happiness, that fulfillment. And most of his music is about that longing, that desire to get back to that loving state, you know? And that's what captivated me and has kept me captivated by his music, and just by George. You know, he's an amazing person. There's not very many people out there like him. So he's a special one, you know? Real quickly, I just want to say, you know, today is George Harrison's birthday. And George Harrison lived on Maui for, he had a house out there. I don't know for how many years, but he did own a house on Maui. I lived on Maui for 5 years. I think I had only been on the island for a few months. And I was just kind of like, I don't know if I'm going or staying. I just don't know. And I was kind of like just having this emotional time. I remember getting in my car, driving down to the beach, just putting on his music and listening to it, and looking out at the ocean. And right when I put the CD on and turned it on, this giant double rainbow, full on double rainbow, from it just emerged out of the ocean and went back into the ocean, like fully there. Boom, was just right in front of me. And I remember just like, I bawled my eyes out, and just, I felt so good. I was like, okay, George, thank you. That's what I needed. I'm staying. I stayed on Maui for 5 years after that. And it was a beautiful experience. So yeah, so this is my George Harrison story. I hope you've learned a couple things about George. Yeah, he's just an amazing guy. Go listen to some of his music. And George Harrison made so much history. You know, the whole reason why we have these like benefit concerts nowadays, George Harrison started the benefit concert concept with the concert for Bangladesh. So there's so many things in our modern world that we have to thank George Harrison for, like the benefit concerts. They happen all the time now. Eastern philosophy and Eastern religion that's so big in the Western hemisphere, you know, like we have George Harrison to thank for getting us into that, you know, making it a popular thing. Just his music in general too, like his music's such a beautiful, amazing thing. So yeah, there's so much. I just want to say thank you, George. thank you so much. And thank you to his family for keeping his legacy going and you know, releasing more stuff throughout the years. It's a beautiful thing. His life was so inspirational. And like I said, if it wasn't for George, I wouldn't be making these videos. So thank you so much, George Harrison. Thank you, Olivia Harrison, and thank you, Danny Harrison. And here's to many, many more years of celebrating your life in music. So thank you so much, guys, for joining me today. If you haven't liked the video, please like the video and please subscribe to this channel. It just really means a lot to me to be able to share these videos with you. And it makes me so happy when I see those numbers go up. So thank you guys so much for joining me today. Have a wonderful day. Happy birthday, George. Wherever you are out there, I know you're smiling down on us. So yeah, thank you again, George, for all of the music and for sharing your life with us. So thank you so much. Hare Krishna, Jai Gurudev. See you guys later. Take care. Bye-bye.